Thank you for joining me on this Wednesday. Hamas is doing Hamas things. The Red Cross is en route, according to the Times of Israel, to collect 2 more bodies of fallen Israelis murdered by Hamas in the tunnels of Gaza, which will bring, I believe, the total to 9 of the 28 who are missing. And Hamas is saying, we don't have any more. I was asked on Fox this morning by Bill Hemmer and Dana Perino to comment on this situation. Let's play cut number 1.
Hugh Hewitt's here, and Hugh, good morning to you.
Good morning.
I want to read a quote from an Israeli, a freed hostage here, okay? This is what he says. He says, one of the guards was a first-grade teacher. Another was a lecturer at a university. And another was a doctor. These are normal people becoming terrorists. How do you digest that, Hugh?
Well, it takes a while. We know that Hamas, and good morning, Dana and Bill. We know that Hamas is just the uniform version. There are many people who are complicit with their terrorist activities. Many thousands of people crossed into Israel, invaded Israel on 10/7 of 23, in addition to the clothed Hamas terrorists. So there are a lot of people who are complicit, but there are a lot of innocents as well. What Hamas has been doing over the last 24 to 36 hours is executing people, up to 36 people. We're not really sure how many people are still left in Hamas, and we know that there are opposition groups that are armed. And I think back to the Lebanese civil war that lasted from 1975 to 1990. Can't have that replay. So Israel is sitting there saying, we want the bodies of our people. There are at least 21 left. We want those accounted for, or they're going to go up the ladder of escalation. That begins with not sending in as much aid as they promised, and it could go up to returning to their forward lines and combat.
And that leads us to this from President Trump, who was asked about what will happen if Hamas does not disarm. Watch.
Gaza, how long will it take Hamas to disarm, and can you guarantee that is going to happen?
Well, they're going to disarm, and because they said they were going to disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. We have told them we want to disarm, and they will disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm.
Okay, so obviously he's talking tough, and also here's the thing. They all know he means it. I think when he said the we, my take was that it was the royal we, meaning Israel and the United States. Some people are running with it, saying, oh, the president is saying he's going to put boots on the ground in Gaza. I didn't take it that way. How did you?
I agree with you, Dana. The royal we might include some troops from our Arab allies and the Gulf state allies. It might include even some PA people, though Israel doesn't want that. But what the president is saying, don't double-cross me. You don't want to double-cross Donald Trump. You made a deal, deliver on the deal, or he's going to, again, back off objecting to Israeli tactics. As we saw him, he refused to object to the invasion of Gaza City. He didn't pull the, I've looked at the maps that Vice President Harris said, and you can't do this. Do whatever you want if they don't live up to the deal. And so Hamas has got a very short clock on which to comply.
We have 200 U.S. troops there. I'm waiting to hear when the other troops are going to arrive and from which countries. I mean, we got to get that thing going right now, especially with the president saying phase 2 is underway. One of the reports earlier today out of Israel is that one of the remains in a coffin that was returned to Israel was not a hostage, was not an Israeli. Here is Benjamin Netanyahu on talking about getting them back with the translation. Watch here.
Regarding the fallen, with the same determination, the same responsibility, the same seriousness, we are dealing with the return of the fallen. We will spare no effort and no means to bring them back. I believe that this way, we will first receive good news about the return of additional fallen hostages. I hope in the coming hours, but we are determined to bring back everyone.
You know, Hugh, in the last couple of months, I honestly did not feel that the living hostages would ever go home, but they have. I don't know now how you accomplish this. Do you?
I think the threat, the credible threat of force, which both Donald Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu have made and followed through, is the only way to do it. But when the Israelis say, we want our people back, that's a unifying issue. And if they now escalate, there is no threat to living hostages. They might use penetrating ordnance to go down into the tunnel. They could flood the tunnels. They can do all sorts of things, and they can continue the destruction of Gaza City. which has to proceed if Israel has to move back to those front lines. So, Bill, I think that Hamas, watching on in their cellar TVs, have better take this very seriously, very quickly.
Hope you're right.
Great to have
And
you.
I think that's the only answer, is that the ladder of escalation is there, and Israel plus the backing of Donald Trump is going to climb it if those bodies do not come back. I want to go from the most serious thing to the least serious thing. Katie Porter. I have never seen a campaign implode this quickly until 2 weeks ago, maybe even a week ago. Katie Porter was the front runner to be the next governor of California because she had good name ID, and she is a darling of the progressives, and the blues know it's the turn for the Southern California blues to have the state house. They've had it up there in Northern California for like 16 years between Jerry Brown and Gavin Newsom. So Katie Porter had a little bit of a lead, but they got a jungle primary. Two people emerged from it. Steve Hilton's going to be one of them, the GOP nominee, not because he's a GOP nominee, but because he's doing so well. Katie Porter was ahead of like Javier Becerra and a bunch of other Democrats, but she blew up repeatedly herself this week. And then yesterday, in an attempt to stop what must be massive hemorrhaging of support, she went on Inside California Politics with Nikki Lorenzo in a desperate attempt to say no mas, no mas, cut number 10. And by the way, as you listen to this, remember, if this was a fight, you'd think it was rigged. Cut number 10.
Should California voters feel confident that there aren't any more Katie Porter videos out there?
Well, what I know is that I could have done better in those moments. I'm going to be focused on earning their votes and earning their trust. That's true in every election. I've only ever had tough elections. So I'm absolutely aware that I'm going to have to continue to show them. I'm going to have to answer every question. I'm glad I got to continue that interview and finish that interview and answer all her questions. And that's what I'm going to continue to do, to show Californians not only that I understand their problems, but that I have the will and the strength of character to actually get something done about them.
But not just the CBS interview, the interview with the staffer. Can voters be confident that there won't be another one of those videos that's going to come to light?
What I do know is that I could have done better in that situation.
But that's not a no. So is there potentially another video that we're going to see?
Nikki, I'm going to be honest with you. I know that video was several years ago, as you know, and I apologize to the staffer. That's super important to me, and will continue to try to hold myself to do better. That's what I can promise.
But not that there's not going to be any more videos, because that's what people are wondering. Are we going to see something else like that?
I can tell you what I've told you, which is that I am taking responsibility for this situation, and I'm also not going to back down for fighting back for California, from being tough. I don't think this is a moment where the same old is going to cut it. But that doesn't change the fact that what I did to that staffer was wrong. I've acknowledged it to her in that moment, and I'm acknowledging it now.
All right. She was asked 6 times, are there going to be any more Katie Porter videos? Then when she didn't answer, she said, no, I need another one of those videos, like where you were screaming, get out of my shot. Then she got, just yes or no, are there any more videos? And then 2 more attempts to land the plane, and the clip runs out. Katie Porter never answered the question. From which my highly refined news instincts tell me there are more Katie Porter videos coming, and that Katie Porter's done. Put a fork in Katie Porter. She's done. 5 times the reporter tried to answer the plane and answer the question, land the plane, and it did not happen. 5 times. What is going to happen? I'm going to take my relief factor. Why? Long drive ahead tomorrow and the next day, and hamstring has been pulled. Don't know what to do about that, but I do know take relief factor. I do it every hour. I tell you about every hour. When I take it in the first hour, and today I'm going to take it in the second hour as well, or the third hour twice today. And the reason is simple. When you have a minor aches and pains, don't aggravate the injury. Don't go out there and do stupid stuff. Instead, double up on your relief factor, and it will go away. Why? Because relief factor works with your body's anti-inflammatory system. Icarian and curcumin, resveratrol, omega, those 4 pills I took with a little bit of Trader Joe's water. That's all you really need. That's all you don't need the over-the-counter, you don't need the Aleve, you don't need the ibuprofen, certainly don't need prescription meds. All you need to do, help your body anti-inflammatory system kick in. So call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, or head over to their website, find the starter pack. You can get it on the phone as well, $19.95, less than $1 a day. But head over to their website. The starter pack is there as well at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. I do want to remind all of you that you're paying a lot of money for your cell phone. I don't know who you are or where you are or what your cell phone company is, but you're paying a lot of money for it. Don't pay more than you have to. Save yourself some money with Consumer Cellular. Go to consumercellular.com/Hugh or call 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. And when you do that, Consumer Cellular, hit one button and you'll be talking with a live U.S.-based representative. Have your phone bill with you if it's convenient for you to get that so that you can find out how much data you are actually using and what you're paying for it. You can keep your number, you can keep your data, you can keep all that stuff. Just switch to Consumer Cellular. It takes about 20 minutes, and you'll save a lot of money. Now, especially if you're 50 years and older and you like to use a lot of data, they have a special deal if you're 50 years and older, which are 2 lines, okay? So you can take care of yourself and your spouse if you've got lines, or your partner or one of your kids. $60 a month if it's 50 and older. All right. Also want you to remember my code, HUGH25, so you can save $5 off of each of your first 5 monthly invoices when you switch to Consumer Cellular. Have savings, don't sacrifice service. All right. consumercellular.com/Hugh, consumercellular.com/Hugh, or 1-800-411-4454. J.D. Vance on the Charlie Kirk Show today. Let's go to the first cut of the Vice President talking about what's ahead, and that is cut number, I can't find
for
it.
all of the negativity and the hate and the people celebrating Charlie's assassination, for every one negative moment, I've had 1,000 positive moments in the past month. I've had people who've come up to me who said, I went back to church because Charlie got shot. I've had people come up and say that they listened to his clips for the first time, didn't even know who he was, especially like older people who didn't know who he was before he was killed, but now they're consuming his video content and learning from it, getting back to their faith. I just remember there's a lot of love out there, and we should remember that for all of the hate out there, there's 10 times as much love. I think that's has to be our charge as we move forward and carry on Charlie's legacy.
Now, the Vice President being very generous with his time, and I thought it was important that he brought up the religious awakening that a lot of people are undergoing, and it's mostly young people, and it's not limited to people who were in Turning Point. It's been going on for a couple of years now. I go back to the Francis Asbury College revival of a couple of years ago at the Ohio State University. It's been ongoing for a couple of years. Selena Zito, who we'll talk with a little bit later, talked about it in Pittsburgh. Ann Wilson was on Fox and Friends with Ainsley Earhart this morning talking about what's going on among America's youth. Cut number 15.
Young Americans are leading a Christian revival across the country. Bible sales increasing over 40% since 2022. Religion app downloads surging nearly 80%. That increase since 2019. And Christian music Spotify streams up 50% from 2019. Our next guest is helping fuel this movement, bringing faith into the mainstream. So let's bring in Christian artist and influencer Ann Wilson. Ann, so good to have you in the studio.
Thank you. It's
We
so good to
love
be here.
your music.
Thank you so much.
What do you think about this? This is awesome. This
It's
revival.
amazing. It really is. It's such a cool thing to witness, honestly, being in the heart of Gen Z as a 23-year-old and seeing my generation come to know Jesus like in a way they never have before is such an encouraging thing to see.
Great. And you've just been honored at the Kennedy Center for being able to find that crossroads between Christian music and mainstream.
Yeah, it's an honor. I mean, truly, I've always loved Christian music and country music. I was raised on both, but my faith is the biggest and most important thing in my life. And so to be able to bring that into the mainstream world and to be honored for that is such a cool thing.
What are you hearing from your generation? Are a lot of people open about their faith? Because when we were growing up, remember our grandparents were like, 2 things we don't talk about. We don't talk about our faith. We don't talk about politics.
Yeah.
I feel like your generation, it's getting easier to talk about as generations move along.
Yeah, it feels like that. It feels like my generation is just, they're hungry for something real and something lasting to grab to. And so I think vulnerability has become a big thing in my generation. People just being honest about what they're going through, what they're facing in their life, the depression or anxiety they're walking through, or their struggles. And I think people are just being so much more open about faith and the need that we have for it in our
Yes, I
country.
mean, you sing about it. Your song, My Jesus, is just beautiful. Y'all download that song. And Carry Me, I love that song as well.
you.
Tell us about your new album. It's called Stars, and it comes out soon, October 17th.
Yes, October 17th. I'm so excited. This is my third album. This record is so vulnerable and honest and real. There's songs on there that just really talk about what I've gone through in the last year of my life. My brother passed away in 2017, and through the loss of my brother, I've gotten to write so many songs about him and our relationship that we had together. And one of the new songs I wrote for him is called 23 on the record, and it's all about how I turned the age that my brother was when he passed away. And so it was like this tribute to him, and the record is just, it's full of like the faith-based, but then also the country sound, and I'm just so excited about it. I can't wait for it to come out.
I was thinking,
I'm very glad that there are people like Ann Wilson and shows like Fox and Friends that will spotlight this. It is a recurring theme in America that young people start moments of religious revival. They started the Jesus People back when I was in grade school, made the cover of Time magazine. Greg Laurie often talks about this. Chuck Smith got it started in Orange County, not far from where Generalissimo lives. In fact, Generalissimo used to go to Chuck Smith's church. Generalissimo, are you still going to Chuck Smith's church?
No, I actually go to Greg Laurie's church.
Oh, you go to Greg Laurie's. Okay. Well, I hope you're going to work the Harvest Crusade this year, did you?
We did work the Harvest Crusade. My wife and I did merch at the...
merch?
Yes, we did merch.
No wonder you've got all that Harvest stuff.
Yes, we have a lot
You
of
just
Harvest
walked off with it. You know, Sticky Fingers is not biblical.
They offered us one free piece of merch for working it, and we decided not to. We didn't. Bad
I'm not
witness.
buying that, but I'm
Bad
very
witness.
glad to hear that. Let me tell you about one of our great sponsors, AndrewandTodd.com. If you are looking, I'm looking at the markets today, and they're screwed up again. Not bad sell-offs. They're just confused. All right, and oil is down quite a lot. And by confused, I mean they really don't know if they're going to go up or going to go down. The Dow is up 202 points. The Nasdaq is down 172 points. The S&P is down 10, which is basically nothing. The 10-year Treasury, though, remains at just a little bit over 4%, 4.038%. And that means now is the time to call AndrewandTodd.com. They are lenders. They're a bank. 888-888-1172. Many of you are holding on tight to your 30-year fixed 3% mortgage. Maybe a little bit lower, maybe a little bit higher, and you think, this is my mortgage for life. I'm never moving. This is a math problem, all right? If you have a lot of debt, if you don't have any debt, hang on to that. Absolutely. If you don't have to move, absolutely don't do a thing. But if you have a lot of debt, student debt, car loan, credit card, you've got to find out whether it makes sense to swap your 30-year fixed at 3.5 for a 30-year fixed at 5.5 or 6, whatever they can get you. Consolidate all your debt and then stay on a plan. That's a long conversation, which you got to have with Andrew Del Rey or Todd Avakian. I've known Andrew for 20-plus years in my Bible study, and Todd half as long. Call them, 888-888-1172. They serve thousands of our customers, thousands. They've done my mortgage. They've done Dwayne's mortgage when I moved back to the East Coast. Dwayne, when he moved in with his wonderful new wife in California. 888-888-1172, 888-888-1172 connects you to AndrewandTodd.com. The Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965, following the Civil Rights Act of 1964, to make sure that Americans got an opportunity to cast their ballot and that discrimination based on race or any other factor prohibited by the Voting Rights Act could not enter into play. The act was amended in 1982. There is now an argument that it's been abused by the courts and by state legislatures to take account of race to order to pack districts with different minorities to create minority-majority districts, even though the minority is not just one minority. And this has created a lot of controversy. And it's also called a question as to whether or not the Voting Rights Act of 1965 in its original iteration or in its 1982 amended form in fact violate the Constitution because they rely upon race in drawing of districts, which is anathema to the 14th Amendment. The argument was heated. It went on for a long time. At one point, Justice Brown Jackson made an argument that the Voting Rights Act was like the Americans with Disability Act. I scratched my head a little bit. Here's that excerpt, cut number 3.
A kind of paradigmatic example of this is something like the ADA. Congress passed the Americans with Disabilities Act against the backdrop of a world that was generally not accessible to people with disabilities. And so it was discriminatory in effect because these folks were not able to access these buildings. And it didn't matter whether the person who built the building or the person who owned the building intended for them to be exclusionary. That's irrelevant. Congress said the facilities have to be made equally open to people with disabilities if readily possible. I guess I don't understand why that's...
And what Justice Brown Jackson did not explain is that accommodations based upon disability, like those based upon income or those based upon age, are subject to rational basis review, meaning that Congress is given the lead and the courts defer to it. But when Congress or a state or local agency uses gender, intermediate scrutiny, and you have to have a very compelling reason to survive scrutiny, and then when you discriminate on the basis of race or religion, ethnicity, or country of origin, strict scrutiny kicks in. So the ADA has nothing to do with the Voting Rights Act. It's really the kind of a comment where I would look at a student and say, have you not been listening for 3 months? I've gone through strict scrutiny and intermediate scrutiny and rational basis scrutiny for 3 months now when I teach the 14th Amendment, and you know that there are lots of classifications. We classify people every day for a bunch of things. I've got white hair. I'm classified on the basis I have to wear corrective lenses. That is a rational basis classification. If you're a business owner and you qualify for a liquor license or you don't, that's a rational basis classification. But we do not use race to award benefits or inflict penalties. We do not use gender except in extraordinary cases. Intermediate scrutiny is a tough thing to survive, but you don't survive strict scrutiny. So that was wholly unpersuasive, what Justice Jackson had to say there. Janai Nelson, NAACP attorney at oral argument today, cut number 4.
That's right. And in the state of Louisiana, that analysis was conducted in the Nairn case, and it was clear that regardless of party, white Democrats were not voting for black candidates, whether they were Democrats or not. And we know that there is such a significant chasm between how black and white voters vote in Louisiana that there's no question that even if there is some correlation between race and party, that race is the driving factor.
Can you comment on the Solicitor General's suggestion at page...
That was Justice Alito, I believe. Point being, she's upset that white Democrats won't vote for black Democrats. And I don't know that that's true or not true. I know it's irrelevant. The Voting Rights Act is supposed to prohibit racially discriminatory practices. It's not supposed to oblige you to vote for people of the same race or a particular race. I think Title II of the Voting Rights Act is done. I think. We'll find out. What's not done is our effort to partner with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews to help people in Israel enjoying their first week of peace in 2 years. I don't think the Houthis have fired on them. Hezbollah has been shattered. Hamas is marching around in what's part of Gaza. They're allowed to march around in shooting people and executing people. But all's quiet on the Israeli fronts right now, but the rebuilding is going on, and we need your help. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews asks you to please be as generous as you can. There is a banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Please go to that banner. I'll play a little bit of Yael Eckstein later in the program, but please go to that banner at HughHewitt.com. Tax-deductible contribution. Christians and Jews around the world support Israel in their rebuilding effort over the last 2 years of this long and arduous war. Please join us in helping IFCJ. The banner is at HughHewitt.com. A couple more clips from today's Charlie Kirk show. Vice President Vance and Russ Vought, Director of OMB, were on the program today. Here's the Vice President talking about the most significant political problem in the United States right now. Cut number 7, it's, of course, violence.
You have to acknowledge the problem before you can actually solve it.
And right now you have a number of people who actually think words are violence. And if words are violence, then one reasonable response to people saying things you don't like is to kill them. And we have to just completely reject that in the United States of America. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to get out there to Ole Miss to go and do this, because I think that engagement really matters. And it's not most people, right? This is the good news. It's not most people who think that Charlie, meaning most people on the left who think that Charlie deserved to die because they said something that they had disagreed with or that they even found offensive. But it is a large enough and powerful enough minority. It's pretty well funded. There's a lot of resources behind it. There are a lot of powerful media voices behind it. And it is, I think, the most significant domestic problem we have in the United States of America is this justification of violence, which then, of course, leads to the real thing.
And what I really appreciated about the vice president, he did not do a both sides have a problem dance and tap. Cut number 8.
Real unity comes from acknowledging the reality of the situation that we're in, right? Unity requires everybody being on the same page, having some commonality of values. And real unity requires us to acknowledge the fact that while, yes, there are crazies on both sides, we have a country of 330 million people, you're going to be able to find crazies on either side. Political violence is just a statistical fact. It's a bigger problem on the left. And if you had, God forbid, somebody on the left who was assassinated, I'm sure that you could find one person who would maybe celebrate it or one person who would be offensive. But the fact that it became mainstream to celebrate Charlie's death, to talk about the fact that he maybe deserved to die because he had said hateful things like, we don't want women playing, or we don't want men playing in women's sports. Just the effort to try to justify his murder, to lie about things that he had said, so as to justify his killing, it was just really disgusting and really disgraceful. And one of the things that we just have to, I want our country to be unified again. I really do. I mean, I'm the Vice President of the United States. I really do feel like I represent every single person, even the people who say disgusting things. But if we're going to have real unity in this country, we're all going to have to acknowledge that killing people for what they think and what they believe is wrong. And right now, that violent impulse is a bigger problem on the left than the right.
Very well said, Mr. Vice President. Not long after he was on the Charlie Kirk Show, the director of the Office of Management and Budget, Russ Vought, showed up to talk about what's ahead if the Schumer shutdown continues. Cut number 12.
So are we talking 10 people? We talking 1,000 people? We talking 10,000 people?
We're definitely talking thousands of people. Much of the reporting has been based on kind of court snapshots, which they've articulated is in the 4,000 number of people. But that's just a snapshot, and I think it'll get much higher. And we're going to keep those riffs rolling throughout this shutdown because we think it's important to stay on offense for the American taxpayer and the American people in getting a government that, if there's an opportunity to have less bureaucracy, and think of Green New Deal programs at the Department of Energy, think the Minority Business Development Agency at Commerce that divvies up business grants on the basis of race, think environmental justice at EPA, think about CISA. CISA was an area that we riffed, which was participating in censorship of the American people. We want to be very aggressive where we can be in shuttering the bureaucracy, not just the funding, but the bureaucracy, that we now have an opportunity to do that. And that's where we're going to be looking for our opportunity.
That is one smart guy, and he's got his knife out to go after bureaucracy and especially the ideological extremes that embedded themselves in the Obama and the Biden presidencies within the permanent government. What did not embed itself in the Biden and the Obama presidencies was any desire to go and explore and produce oil and natural gas in the United States and to transport it across the United States. Long ago and far away, I represented a couple of oil and natural gas companies, both in the exploration side and on the pipeline construction side. Mostly I did home developers, shopping center, commercial, industrial, real estate development, permitting. But I had a few oil and gas producers, and it's a nightmare. It really is a nightmare. And it shouldn't be. We got loads of oil and natural gas in the United States, and we've got to start getting it, which is why one of our sponsors is the American Exploration and Production Council, AXPC.org, AXPC.org. It represents leading independent oil and gas producers. It has a blueprint for Congress to fix the permitting system. The plan modernizes the outdated and weaponized permitting laws, all the ability of these groups to come into court and stop and sue forever and then get attorney's fees for ridiculous reasons. There's common sense reform to be had. Cut bureaucracy, not environmental safeguards. And here's the reality. We need this energy. We need the oil. We need the natural gas. We need the coal. We need the pipelines, or Americans will continue to pay the price at the pump. We need our economy to grow. We need our energy to be abundant, and we need to get more of it out of the ground. How do we do that? Visit axpc.org, axpc.org. That's the American Exploration and Production Council. Great sponsors of the show. I love these people. We're going to have lunch with them next week because, boy, do I sing from their hymnal or they're singing from my hymnal. I'm not sure. Speaking about hymnals, I want to say all God's children matter, and the people of Israel matter a lot right now, and they need a lot of help. And we have friends, and they are sponsoring a campaign here on the Hugh Hewitt Show from the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. I want you to listen to Yael Eckstein talk about what it is that they are accomplishing in Israel right now.
The needs right now are huge, both for physical comfort of food and medicine, of clothing and bomb shelters, what the fellowship provides, but also for a message of brotherhood, a message that we're not alone, that there are millions of Christians who are sitting in their homes right now, whether it's in Oklahoma or North Carolina, whether they're sitting in Michigan or California or New York, Christians who are turning to the fellowship through love and prayer and donations and saying, tell the people of Israel that they're not alone.
Now, I'm not sure there are any in Michigan. No, I'm kidding. That's the team up north. There are probably a couple of people, lots of people in Ohio giving. All you have to do is call 800-492-1717, 800-492-1717, 800-492-1717, or go to the banner for the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. It says Israel needs help. It's at the top of my website, HughHewitt.com. Please be as generous as you can. It's tax deductible and it's secure. The banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Benjamin Netanyahu was interviewed today by CBS News, Tony Dokopil, with people. You know, people always criticizing Netanyahu. It's like Trump, only I'm told by Israelis it's TDS times 10. It's exponential amount of Netanyahu derangement syndrome. So here's cut number 11. Pretty interesting.
You just mentioned how closely you're working with Donald Trump on this. He took some digs at you, as he often does with people, during his speech at the Knesset. Why does he say you're so hard to work with?
Well, I hope he says that because I'm very tough on the matters that pertain to my country's future. Israel is, where the Jewish people are 3,500 years old. And we went through the odyssey of time with horrible things. I mean, with pogroms and expulsions and mass murder, and ultimately the worst mass murder of them all, which is the Holocaust. And when we reestablished the Jewish state and the Israel Defense Force, we said never again. We're not going to have our head on the chopping block again. We will resist this, and we did. And I think that sometimes it's the responsibility, not sometimes, it is always the responsibility of the leader of the Jewish state to make sure that the Jewish state is never imperiled with its very existence. That's why I did the things I did, including the historic action against Iran that threatened to annihilate us, throw atomic bombs at us. So, when I believe that what I'm asked to do is fine, I say yes. And when I think I have to say no, I say it. And that's my job. My job is to protect the Jewish state and assure the future of the Jewish people. That means assuring the future of the state of Israel.
I love that. I love hearing that, and I think he's going to run on that, and I gather he's going to win on that. Nancy Pelosi, meanwhile, got caught outside of the Capitol today with a gaggle that didn't go her way. Cut number 16.
Congresswoman Pelosi, are you at all concerned that the new January 6th committee will find you liable for that day? Are you at all concerned about the new January 6th committee finding you liable for that day? Why did you refuse the National Guard on January 6th?
Shut up. I did not refuse the National Guard. The president didn't send it. Why are you coming here with Republican talking points as if you're a serious journalist?
The American people want to know. We still have questions. Thank you.
Can we hear that again? I like that a lot.
Congresswoman Pelosi, are you at all concerned that the new January 6th committee will find you liable for that day? Are you at all concerned about the new January 6th committee finding you liable for that day? Why did you refuse the National Guard on January 6th?
Shut up. I did not refuse the National Guard. The president didn't send it. Why are you coming here with Republican talking points as if you're a serious
Katie Porter's school of getting along with the media, right? Shut up! How many times have I told people to shut up in 35 years, Dwayne? People have hung up on me, but I don't think I've ever told anyone to say shut up.
I honestly can't think of one.
No, it's not. It's not done in the Hewitt household. Mrs. Hewitt didn't raise a rude person. Johnson gave a press conference this morning about it. Cut number 13 is the beginning of that presser.
Everyone needs to understand that 1.3 million active duty service members would be missing a paycheck. They'll get their check, thankfully, because President Trump has shown strong leadership. And under his direction, the Department of War has now redirected unspent funds to ensure that our troops are taken care of. And this is while Democrats are playing political games. Last night, they played some games. They stormed my office. Maybe you saw some of the video online that they themselves shared, or someone did. They berated a Capitol Police officer, screamed at him. He was just merely standing his post. Shows again their disdain for law enforcement, as we see all around the country, the Democrats and everyone in that party, screaming, assaulting ICE officers. They did it right here in the Capitol last night. A few members of Congress went into the little foyer of my office and tore down a sign that I had up and just engaged in all sorts of political stunts and antics. They've been doing that every day now, and it shows their desperation. It also shows a very strong contrast between the party that is working for the people and trying to keep the government open and do the right thing, and the party that is engaging in all this nonsense.
Winston Churchill always said, trust the people. When he won elections, when he lost the election, he always said, trust the people. He got that from his father, Randolph Churchill, trust the people. I trust the people on the Schumer shutdown. There is no way to blame Republicans. There is no way to shift attention from the fact that the government isn't open. If you are missing a paycheck today because you're a civil servant, it's because the Democrats chose not to pay you. It is that simple. If you are finding yourself short, not making a car payment, hoping that the bank doesn't foreclose, hoping your kid's school tuition they'll give you a little bit of grace because you're a Fed, realize that was Chuck Schumer's decision. He voted again and again for continuing resolutions over the last many years. They don't add to spending. They don't detract from spending. They allow conversations to continue and negotiations to go forward. That's Chuck Schumer. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, he's too old for this job. He's lost a step. He doesn't quite know what to do with the left wing of his party. But Mike Johnson knows what to do. Mike Johnson believes in clarity. Cut number 14.
Every single time the Republicans have voted to pay the troops, and by the way, all other federal employees, federal workers, and the Democrats have voted over and over to stop it. And the depressing irony of this, on this particular subject, among all others, is that the most pro-shutdown Democrats actually represent the most active duty service members back home, whom they have taken hostage in this insidious political game. And I want to give you a couple of examples, and this is the actual statistic of the 10 states with the largest military populations. 6 are represented each by 2 Democrats in the Senate who are withholding the paychecks. Here's the list. In California, it's home to 157,000 active duty personnel, the most in the country. Those stationed at Fort Hunter Liggett and Camp Pendleton and Edwards Air Force Base and Vandenberg Space Force Base and others will all miss a paycheck at the end of the month if Democrat obstruction continues. Now, this is worthy of note. Both California senators, Adam Schiff and Alex Padilla, are gleeful about this government shutdown. They agree with Chuck Schumer when he said very candidly just a few days ago, every day of the shutdown gets better for us. Who's the us? He's talking about Democrats. He thinks this is assisting their party and giving him political cover so he doesn't attract a Marxist challenger in his next Senate reelect. That's what this is about. So he thinks the government shutdown is allowing him to show a fight against President Trump and Republicans, and he is happy about that. And so are Adam Schiff and Alex Padilla, while service members are going without paychecks. Virginia. Virginia is home to 119,000 active duty personnel. It is the second most in the country. Those stationed at Naval Station Norfolk, Quantico, and Fort A.P. Hill, and others will miss paychecks at the end of this month if this is not resolved. Both Virginia senators, Tim Kaine and Mark Warner, are playing political games with the paychecks of 119,000 service members. Georgia. Georgia's home to 65,000 active duty personnel. It's the sixth most in the country. Those stationed at Fort Benning, Fort Stewart, Moody Air Force Base, and others will miss paychecks. And just last week, this is so aggravating to us. It's so frustrating to us. It's so wrong. We saw service members waiting hours in lines wrapped around the block at Georgia food pantries. And meanwhile, you've got both Georgia senators, John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, have now voted 8 times against paying those heroes. In Washington, the state of Washington is home to 57,000 active duty personnel. It is the 7th most in the country. And those stationed at Fairchild Air Force Base and Naval Base Kitsap, Joint Base Lewis McChord, and others will miss paychecks. Both Washington senators, Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell, have repeatedly voted against pay for service members in the Evergreen State. Hawaii. Hawaii is home to 43,000 active duty personnel. It is the 8th most in the country. Those stationed at Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, the Schofield Barracks, and others will miss paychecks. And both Hawaii senators, Mazie Hirono and Brian Schatz, have voted against paying soldiers stationed in Hawaii. And by the way, many of them are thousands of miles away from their families. Colorado is home to 35,000 active duty personnel, the 10th most in the country. And those stationed at Fort Carson, Buckley's Space Force Base, Peterson's Space Force Base, and others will miss paychecks. And you guessed it, both Democrat senators are from Colorado, John Hickenlooper and Michael Bennet, have voted against paying those troops in their state. And I just want to mention New York. It gets honorable mention. It isn't in the top 10, but the Empire State is home to 17,000 active duty personnel, the 17th most in the country. Those stationed at Fort Drum and Fort Hamilton and others will miss paychecks. And sadly, both New York senators, Kirsten Gillibrand and the architect of the shutdown himself, Chuck Schumer, can barely hide their delight that the government is closed and troops are not being paid.
Now, I believe that voters are smart, and I believe that no matter how much mainstream media attempts to obfuscate about what this is, it's a Schumer shutdown. He called this. He needs it. He's trying to keep AOC from challenging it in 2028 when he will be 78, completing his 54th year on the Hill. He doesn't know what to do if he's not on the Hill. Like Nancy Pelosi, he's getting old and angry. Can we play Nancy Pelosi one more time for fun? This was at the Capitol yesterday, cut number 16.
Congresswoman Pelosi, are you at all concerned that the new January 6th committee will find you liable for that day? Are you at all concerned about the new January 6th committee finding you liable for that day? Why did you refuse the National Guard on January 6th?
Shut up. I did not refuse the National Guard. The president didn't send it. Why are you coming here with Republican talking points as if you're a serious journalist?
The American people want to know. We still have questions. Thank you.
Good for you, whoever you are who is asking that. Shut up. That's Nancy Pelosi. We like that part about Nancy Pelosi a lot. Abigail Spanberger is falling in the polls because her running mate for Attorney General wants to kill Republicans, and that came out, the Jones text. But Abigail Spanberger has got her own problems. Steve Guest, alumni of the Hugh Hewitt Show, uncovered some video of a previous congressional debate where Abigail Spanberger goes all in for physician-assisted suicide. Cut number 9.
I support, and I would support, legislation that legalizes the right to die with dignity of a person's choosing, and that would include allowing for medical providers to provide prescriptions for life-ending prescriptions in the cases of someone who's deemed medically competent to make that decision, mentally competent to make that decision. I oppose the ability of religious institutions to put their religious-based ideas on individuals and their healthcare choices and options. I believe that we should trust people to have relationships with their healthcare providers that lead them to make strong decisions based on their medical practices. And I do not believe that people should have the option to allow their own personal beliefs to dictate the type of medical care that they are providing their patients.
Let me explain that. She's against the First Amendment. She wants Catholic hospitals to have to provide assisted suicide, Catholic hospitals to have to provide abortion, Catholic nurses, Catholic doctors to do the same. They do not have to do that. The First Amendment protects their right of conscience. Coming up, Amit Segal and Nadav Eyal, back-to-back, two of Israel's two greatest political reporters. Before we go to that, I want to remind you at the top of HughHewitt.com, there is a banner where you can help out the people of Israel as they emerge from 2 very long years, costly years of war, untold suffering. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews have given over $1 million to hostage families, $5 million to resilience centers across the small state of Israel where people who have been upset and disturbed and maybe unbalanced a bit by the long war can get help. You can make a donation to the International Federation of Christians and Jews at the banner at the top of HughHewitt.com or call 800-492-1717. That's 800-492-1717. But your tax-deductible donation is securely and safely made via the banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. One of the great voices I've depended upon over the last 2 years from Israel is Amit Segal. He has a brand new book coming out called A Call at 4 a.m., which is winging its way to me, and then I'll have an extended conversation with Amit about A Call at 4 a.m. You can pre-order it right now. It's been available in Hebrew, but it's been translated in English. Amit, welcome, and thank you for joining me on the day after the release of the 20 living hostages. I wanted to hear from someone as well connected as you, the reaction of the Israeli government to Hamas screwing around with the remains of at least 20 of the deceased hostages. What are they saying?
No surprises you. No one thought that they would just give the bodies, which, by the way, I don't know any terrorist organization on earth that steals bodies of citizens and keeps them for years and years. That's their only asset, notorious asset, left after they were forced to give the 20 live hostages. So they will try to prolong it. However, Israel, in coordination with the United States and President Trump, said that it would reduce the number of trucks of humanitarian aid and stop the Rafah crossing from operating till the last hostage, the last deceased hostage is back in Israel. So what we know now is that tonight Israeli time and tomorrow evening Israeli time, more bodies of hostages would be brought back to Israel, thus reducing the number to, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 15 or 16. The assumption is that Hamas doesn't know about the whereabouts of, give or take, 8 or 9 bodies. So it will still have 7, 8 bodies to have monstrous negotiations about.
It is very ghoulish, Amit, but as anyone in the government said, part of the deal were the return of the remains of our very important war dead. We're going to go back to the lines that we withdrew from, or worse, resume combat unless you hurry up and get us the bodies. Has anyone made that threat yet?
Not yet. However, that was the whole point of insisting on releasing all the live hostages before completing the withdrawal. The idea in the Biden administration, for instance, and even among the Israeli public and some ministers in the government was, let's make a full withdrawal and then we'll get the live hostages and we'll end the war in the regional borders prior to October 7th. The insistence of this government and the agreement of President Trump enabled the situation in which you are able to have credible threats. Otherwise, you couldn't have done that. So in a few days, if Hamas doesn't bring back all the bodies, I'm quite sure we'll hear this.
All right. Now, Amit, I'm not an Israeli. I'm not a Jew. I just observe politics from afar.
Nobody's perfect. It's okay.
Okay. I think Netanyahu is a statesman by any definition of a statesman. I understand he's as divisive in Israel as President Trump is in the United States. But what he pulled off after the disaster of 10/7 is nothing short of extraordinary. Has anybody changed their opinion of him? That's really a very precise question. I know a lot of people hate him and a lot of people love him. But the people in the middle, has anyone changed their opinion of him over the last 6 months?
I'll put it this. It's similar to the Trump derangement syndrome, but multiplied by 10, because Trump is here since 2017, and Netanyahu is here since 1996. It's his 30th year around as prime minister or the head of the opposition, and is almost 40th year in politics. So people are fixed about it. It's their opinion is made of concrete, not it's not that elastic. However, following October 7th failure, one could see a dramatic decrease in the support for Prime Minister Netanyahu, and since then, you see a slowly yet steady increase. He's still not in the levels where he was prior to October 7th, but I have to say there hasn't been any pause since the signing of the deal and bringing back all the hostages. Because of the holidays in Israel, it's quite hard for pollsters to operate in these days where everyone is on vacation. So I think in a few days we'll know. My guts tell me, my kishke, like we say in Hebrew, that we are going to see improvement in Netanyahu's standing. And I would say that had the election been held today, I would say that the lion's share of chances is that Netanyahu would be the next prime minister.
Okay, well, that, to me, I don't know who replaces a statesman, because for the next 3 years you've got to deal with Donald Trump and possibly thereafter Trump administration people. Is there anybody else of stature in Israel with anything resembling the relationship that the prime minister has with the president?
Well, President Trump insisted yesterday in the Knesset in his ecstatic speech, I've never seen anything like this in the Knesset, that his relationship is great with Netanyahu, but it can work with other, it touches the very fundamentals of the United States and Israel. So I think he would cooperate with other figures. I think Netanyahu's standing in Washington and his most loyal minister, Ron Dermer, enable him to navigate the situation way more efficiently than any other Israeli politician within this very specific Republican administration. I don't think that if someone else is elected, we'll see deterioration in the level of cooperation between Israel and the United States. But I think something really important happened yesterday. You know, there are no windows in the Knesset plenary due to security reasons. When the Knesset was built, it was 1 year prior to the Six-Day War, so the Knesset was only 1 mile from the Jordanian border. But the lack of windows is not the reason why there was no daylight yesterday between Israel and Washington, not an inch. And since I'm convinced that the war, part of the reasons for Hamas to initiate this war on October 7th was the huge daylight between President Biden and Israel. So I think it's crucial for the security of the entire Middle East that there is no daylight.
I agree with that. And by the way, I think Israel is the equal of any ally that the United States has, and it might be the most important one when it comes to both strength, the ability to use it, and will and purpose. Last question, Amit. Ron Dermer, I've only met him once. He's sort of a superstar, kind of a hidden Kissinger. Does he have stature in the general public of Israel such that he could ever run for office, or is he one of those guys like Kissinger who always be in the room and never actually elected to anything?
I met Ron Dermer in the Shiva after the funeral of his late mother this April, and his brother was the mayor of Miami Beach. He's the very well-known Republican. Their father was the mayor as well of Miami Beach. And Ron's brother told him, Daddy would be very proud of you. So everybody asked why. He said, because you became one of the most influential ministers in the history of Israel without getting a single vote. He was nominated on the basis of loyalty to the prime minister. I think Ron Dermer is the best minister Israel has ever had in its history. He is solely responsible for the coordination between Israel and Iran and the US prior to the attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. However, he is not very well known in Israel because his Hebrew is not as good as you might think. He's
Of course. So you're saying no at length, and I get it, but I just think he is your Kissinger and remarkable. I look forward to talking to you about the call at 4 a.m. as soon as I get it, Amit. Thank you for joining me. Follow Amit on X at Amit Segal. Get his newsletter. It's Noon in Israel for free at AmitSegal.net. Thank you, Amit. My guest is Nadav Eyal. I have been listening to Nadav on Dan Senor's podcast, Call Me Back, for 2 years. I feel like I know him. I've never talked to him. I will describe him to you as sort of the Dan Balls of Israel. I think he is an objective assessor of Israeli politics. And Nadav, I'd like to have you back for a long conversation, but on this day after that craziest...
No, first of all, I want to say that I follow your show, and I follow what you write on X, and I follow your show, and I feel so privileged that we finally managed to do this. So it's such a pleasure.
Well, I want a long conversation, but I want my audience to hear from you. What happens next in the Israeli political scene? You've got this giant of a figure in terms of Netanyahu, who, like President Trump, Father Time is undefeated. They'll have to pass from the stage. What is the Israeli political environment going to be like? And take all 5 minutes to just explain it for us. What's going to follow these men?
Okay, so first of all, we're in the midst of an election year. That's the most important thing. By October of 26, the end of October, Israel is due to have an election. Now, the government can pretty much decide when will the election be. It could be February or May or probably October, although it's really a question if this coalition can survive to the October 26. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu has been basically losing most, if not all polls since March of 23. So 7 months before October 7, he started losing in the polls. We need to explain that, of course, when I say losing in the polls, this is not a personal candidate running for election. It's not the president of the United States. He's running as part of a multi-party system. You need to have a coalition government. I guess most of the people listening to you know how the Israeli political scene generally works. He needs to get 61 seats out of 120 to form a government. And according to, pretty much all of the polls since March 23, he doesn't have those 61. However, and of course, October 7 didn't make his position better, but actually much, much worse. Now, things are changing. Why? After the war with Iran, we thought he's going to see a bump in the polls. He didn't. He didn't see a bump in the polls, although this was a huge success of Israel, definitely credited to Prime Minister Netanyahu, who is pushing this agenda for many years of tackling Iran's nuclear program. Now we've seen the beginnings of changes in the polls, a positive bump for Prime Minister Netanyahu and for the Likud in the polls. We've seen a Channel 13 poll. We've seen other polls that are saying that Netanyahu is growing stronger. Now, personally, Netanyahu has been growing stronger since October 7. So his popularity sank personally after October 7, a lot of mistrust. But then it was starting to pick up very slowly, but still gradually picking up throughout the months, throughout these 2 years. The Likud, the needle didn't move for the Likud, for his party at all. He didn't get more support. But now we're seeing first signs, that this is changing too. This is a man who has won more election campaigns than any other in the world in a freely elected democratic country. So definitely burying him politically would be a mistake. I should say that if you look at polls, still most Israelis say they do not trust the prime minister. They're unhappy with the way that he managed this war. But his chances look better and better, and he's a great campaigner.
Looking beyond him, Nadav, to whenever he retires or is defeated, is the country moving significantly to the right, or is it remaining where it's been as mixed up a democracy as any I've seen on the planet?
It's definitely moving to the right. It moved to the right. Well, the move to the right historically began after the failure of the Camp David summit led by President Clinton together with Ehud Barak and Yasser Arafat. after which there was the second intifada. Then the Israelis basically, for the most important political debate that they have in Israel, it's not about being pro-life or pro-choice. It's not about the right to carry arms. It's not about migration. Everything is about compromise or territorial compromise. And after 2000 and the second intifada, the Israeli public tilted to the right, and that assisted the rise of Prime Minister Ariel Sharon and, of course, of Netanyahu. Now, October 7 is a transformative event in that regard. There is a consensus within the center of Israel's politics, not only the right wing that held to that view years ago, that right now a Palestinian state is simply not viable anymore.
Can you pause for a moment, Nadal? And then I'm going to come back with you, and we've got another 5 minutes to talk, and I'll put it onto the podcast and play it tomorrow. The voice of Middle America is Selena Zito. You can follow Selena on X at Zito Selena. You can get all of her work if you sign up for it over at selenazito.com. She writes for the Washington Post. She writes for the Washington Examiner. She writes for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But I went to get her latest column. It showed up in something called the Herald Extra. So I looked around and I realized she's syndicated everywhere, and it's Creators Syndicate. How many papers are you in?
Hundreds. And here's what's so joyful about it. They're almost all small newspapers. And it really gets me connected to people in a way that I find very valuable. The conversations that I have with them, the emails, it just really helps me continue to understand our country at a very granular level. And when I go around the country, I always try to make sure to stop by the paper and say, hey.
Well, I think it's wonderful. Creators is still going at it. Syndication used to be the only game in town for columnists, and I'm glad that they are still trudging along, and I hope they're still doing cartoons like Drabble, my friend Drabble, Ralph. Let me talk to you a little bit about Colin Athrell, because I have Shermichael Singleton coming up. I try and focus on young commentators, but Colin Athrell leads off your new column from Baldwin, Pennsylvania, probably a Yinzer, probably a Steelers fan. We'll overlook that. How did you come across Colin Athrell?
Oh, you know me, just kicking around. He was such an inspirational kid. And what was really inspirational about Colin, he started a new chapter of Turning Points USA. There's a specific name for it in high school. He's only 15 years old. He got the charter into the school. He got 60 kids to show up to turn out immediately and sign up. But also that interest just keeps ballooning. And I was at a Republican dinner in Baldwin, Pennsylvania. Usually and it was a luncheon. Okay, so this is like the last place you expect a lot of young people to be.
Oh yeah, it's a blue-haired
right?
lady place. It's the blue-haired lady.
No, it was awesome. And two things. I think it's really important to understand the nuance here, because these are the things that people often miss that report outside, like are coming in from DC or New York, is that two things have impacted these young people. First of all, their parents, a lot of them work for U.S. Steel, and not just laborers. They're in the C-suites, and they're engineers, and they're chemists, right? And all of a sudden, a life that was uncertain and destabilized, and they didn't know if their parents were going to have a future. Now their parents are going to not only have a stable future in the community, but also the ability for these young people to stay and work there, walk out of high school and make $104,000 a year is now available to them. So that has moved them to the more conservative side, right? Young people are traditionally more left-leaning. But also the death of Charlie Kirk and the renewal that is happening out here. I mean, I have gone to several revivals. My Catholic church is booming at the seams. And there has been this faith explosion that has gone under the radar. And I think all of those things, faith, Charlie Kirk, but also the stability coming from the U.S. Steel deal has all helped inspire these young people to not only be Republican, but to start, clubs. I mean, it was, I always say his name wrong, de Tocqueville, who was always
Tocqueville, yeah.
amazed. Yeah, always sort of amazed by how we love to form groups, right? We love to form societies. We love to form clubs. And for the past 20 years, that hasn't really been the case, right? The internet sort of blew that apart. Well, that is all changing because everything is cyclical, and you see these young people involved in more group activities and more involved in.
It's a great column, and I think it's called Club America TJ is turning point in high schools. And
Yeah.
I think it stands for Thomas Jefferson. Now, yesterday there was a story about 4, quote, young Republicans. They look to be in their 30s, and they are all rather slovenly and disheveled, and they had been engaged in just the absolute worst racist, misogynist text messaging. They tried to make it a story. By they, I mean legacy media. People pretty quickly figured out it's 4 weirdos, and it didn't go anywhere. It seems to me that the Collins are the story they don't want to cover, but if they can find a marginal groyper, they will cover that marginal groyper.
And that's the problem, right? Because they don't understand people in the middle of the country, so they think that is what people in the middle of the country are like. And it's really comical to me because they're sort of, I noticed this all the time as I've covered Trump in the past 10 years, that anytime they would come to an event, they would always pick, there'd be 25,000 people in an event, right? And all of them would pick the same 4 weird people, and they'd be all on the same national news, and they would be the story. And I would think you didn't see the other 20.
You didn't see this story. But what I'm very glad you pointed out,
yeah.
Colin loves Admiral McRaven's speech. Now, I know the Admiral a little bit, and he made the speech, Make Your Bed, and he wrote the book, Make Your Bed. He's not a cut corners guy. He's not a partisan guy. He's a down the middle kind of keep your nose clean, do your work, do your job well, be respectful of everyone, older, younger, or in between. Did he just volunteer McRaven to you? Did he come up with Admiral McRaven out of the blue?
Oh, yeah, just right out of the blue. I mean, this kid was just so remarkable and so inspiring. And you could see by the amount of kids he brought to a Republican luncheon was really amazing. And also in that room were steelworkers and people like in their 35 to 45. It was not your traditional Republican dinner. And it really
shows the new GOP.
Television changed.
It's Donald Trump's GOP, and Selena Zito knows it like nobody. Go and get her book, Butler, if you haven't already. And if your local newspaper doesn't carry her, ask them to call up Creator Syndicate and get Selena in your local newspaper. Follow her on X as well at Zito Selena. Coming up, Dan Senor. You don't want to miss that. I read a column about it for Fox News tomorrow. I'm in the Relief Factor studio, and I got to take it twice today because I got a long drive ahead of me, and the hamstring's a little bit better from yesterday, but still not completely healed up. So there it goes. Second time today. I always double down when I actually have something going wrong. Normally I take one a day because it's just a preventative thing to keep the anti-inflammatory system strong and robust. But I did pull a hamstring, and therefore I'm doing Relief Factor as often as I can, twice a day. Take it with you wherever you go on the road. And if you are right now in traffic, you got away early from work on the East Coast, or you're going back after a late lunch, and something doesn't feel right, your elbow hurts, your neck hurts, and that's usually the commuters. Some will tell you your lower back or your hamstring, whatever it is, your glute. Try Relief Factor. It's for minor aches and pain. Don't live with over-the-counter. Don't take a leave. Don't take ibuprofen day after day after day after day. Try and get it to go away. Try the all-natural remedy, Relief Factor. It does work. $19.95, 3-week starter supply. You take 3 packets the first week a day, 2 packets a day the second week, and then you're on the 1 a day. Unless something flares up like I've got right now, then you up the dosage. Call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, or just go to relieffactor.com. Generalissimo, we're back telling people about myphdweightloss.com, 864-644-1900. That's
864-644-1900.
So yesterday you committed to losing another 40 pounds on top of the 40 you've lost.
Right after I complete my second 50 laps on It's a Small World after I did it the first time. Yeah, I'm sure I
never
committed
did
to
50.
that.
But
864-644-1900.
That's
864-644-1900. See, we're back in shape on this.
We are. It just took us a while. They took like 3 months off to let us get some new affiliates and expand our reach. But if you're out there and you're thinking about the holidays, Generalissimo, if you start now, if people get on that program, how much weight can they lose by Thanksgiving, which is a good 10 weeks away?
I lost 50 in 12 weeks. You can easily lose, 30, 35 pounds in a month and a half and be ready for Christmas. You bet.
MyPhdWeightLoss.com. No chemicals, no fat shot, no ridiculous bills. Just MyPhdWeightLoss.com. It's affordable weight loss.
864-644-1900.
Let me also tell you about webroot.com, and I really want you to pay attention because it's in Wall Street Journal today, the number of phishing scams from China increased 60% year over year. Phishing scam is one of the things that Webroot Total Protection will protect you against, but it won't protect you against anything unless you get it. So head over to webroot.com/Hewitt today, and you'll get the whole suite of stuff. I'm here to sell you on the fact that for a limited time, Webroot Total Protection is 60% off when you go to webroot.com/Hewitt, webroot.com/Hewitt. Protect your VPN. You get the single plan, 1 person, 5 devices, the family plan, up to 10 people and 10 devices. Doesn't matter to them, but do get protected. All right? Live the best on life possible. Webroot.com/Hewitt. Webroot.com/Hewitt. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Dan Senor has been indispensable to me and to most of my audience for the last 2 years since the attack on Israel on 10/7 when Hamas invaded, thousands of other Gazans invaded. And not long thereafter, I started listening to Dan Senor's daily podcast, Call Me Back. I'd known Dan because of his books, but I didn't know about his podcast, and it's become indispensable. Dan, welcome. I wanted to start this hour with you by telling you I've already had on today Amit Segal and Nadav Eyal, both of whom I know because of you. Haviv Reddy Gur has become a regular because of you. Did you intend to educate?
My people.
I know they are. That you should be getting royalty. Did you intend to educate Gentiles about Israeli media when you started Call Me Back?
I absolutely did not. I'm thrilled that I have. It's one of the unintended, results of all of this. But I will say that most of my podcast audience is Jewish, but about 25% of it, as we understand it, is not Jewish. You are among that 25%. And I have been moved and inspired by how much interest there is from non-Jewish listeners in the content we get into, because our content, as you know, is meaty. It's sometimes dense. And so this whole notion that we're living in the TikTok era and people only want quick hot takes, 30-second reels, all the rest. I think there's some of that obviously going on. That's definitely a phenomenon. But I also think there's a massive appetite and interest in getting smart on subjects from a lot more people than we realize. And those are the people we're trying to speak to, whether they're Jewish or not.
And I think there's a great demand for reliable editors. I begin every morning with news items by John Ellis because I trust John, and then I read I listen to Call Me Back because I trust you. People establish trust for their audience, and then especially for worlds about which the primary consumer, in this case me, and then the secondary consumer, my audience, doesn't know. They've got to find a reliable, fair-minded, objective editor. That's you. Now, when 10/7 happened, and I'm always going to be confusing 9/11 and 10/7. They are much the same to their respective countries. What did you think you were going to do with Call Me Back, and how has your life changed as a result of that day and that horror?
So one, my producer Alon Benatar and I, we never really had a conversation about it when we started. We had a podcast before October 7th, but on October 7th we pivoted all the time to focusing on Israel, the Middle East, and the U.S. U.S. foreign policy in the region. And we just decided we were going to provide voices, largely, mostly, not entirely, but mostly from Israel, who can communicate well in Israel, who could explain what's going on and explain the dilemmas Israelis are dealing with as they figure out how to respond to the worst day for the Jewish people in a single day since the Holocaust, and the challenges Israel faced as it navigated this new world it was in. And I wasn't focused on ideological discipline. I wasn't looking to push one point of view or another. As you know, as a regular listener of my podcast, you just mentioned Amit and Nadav. They tend to come at these issues from pretty different perspectives. And yet I wanted and I have had folks far to the left of Nadav and people far to the right of Amit, and then a whole bunch of people in between come on the show. And I just wanted people around the world to understand the conversation happening inside Israel as Israel deals with this trauma, this war. And if I can make one point to anybody who is paying attention, who doesn't really understand Israel in the Middle East, it's this: Israel is a real country. It's a real country. It's a normal country, in the sense that normal democratic countries have governments that try to deal with extreme setbacks, as Israel was doing. They try to do the right thing. They sometimes get it right. They sometimes make mistakes. They sometimes look back and say we should have done certain things differently. They sometimes are misunderstood. They sometimes have dazzling successes. Israel is all of these things. And by having these different voices explain what is going on, especially people like Amit and Nadav, who are deeply sourced inside Israel, and they're actually great reporters at the core, I just hope to present that realness of the Israeli conversation.
And along the way, Tal Becker on international law, former Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. You've had Ron Dermer on a couple of times, who is their Kissinger. As far as I can tell, he's Israel's Kissinger. You've done this remarkable thing, and it is now my view that Israel is our most important ally, certainly at least the equal of any of our allies. Nuclear power, has the will and the ability to project power, has a very vibrant democracy, and it's got a robust First Amendment style argument going on. So you need to hear a lot of different voices. But what I really want to get at is, what has the last 2 years done to Dan Senor? You very rarely lift the corner and you talk about your boys or Shabbat at your home. It's sort of over, but it's not over. There's a long way to go. What's happened to you in 2 years?
That's a great question. A few things. One, I continue to be shocked by, and this is not me jumping into the negative, so I'm gonna kind of cover a few things here. One, I continue to be shocked by, although less so now than some time ago, but I continue to be shocked by the prevalence and explosion in anti-Semitism globally, and you and I have talked a lot about that. And it's as someone who's raising a Jewish family in the diaspora, it is unnerving. That how we lived the golden age for 80 years, as our friend John Podhoretz said, as Jews in America, and not just Jews in America. I mean, you look at Jews in France, Jews in the UK, just Jews in the West generally have. I think even though the war is over or partially over, or God willing, at least has a pause, I think all of us in the diaspora are entering a new phase now, where we have to kind of pick up now and say, okay, we've been in crisis mode the last 2 years, and I've been putting out these podcasts, and other people have been doing other things, but we've been in this crisis mode, and now as things quiet down, I mean, look at today. I mean, I'll use this example right now. So there are Hamas. What's left of Hamas is busy executing Palestinians, innocent Palestinians in Gaza right now. There's images all over the internet of them. And where are the human rights organizations? Where are the European governments? Where are the college protesters? Suddenly nobody's concerned about Palestinians getting killed. So I see these things today, and the just unbelievable hypocrisy and double standard, and therefore the anti-Semitism. I'm just reminded of that this is here to stay. We're not maybe not to stay, but it's here for a long time. So that's a new world that many of us, including me, have to contend with. I also am. I'm very focused, Hugh, on, and I talked about this in a speech I gave at the 92nd Street Y last May. They had me do the State of the World Jewry address, where I said, while I'm very moved by what I call October 8th Jews, Jews who were not Jewishly engaged, not that involved with Israel, but after October 7th, they suddenly got really engaged because they were in the fight against anti-Semitism. Well, those October 8th Jews now, I hope, will start a new phase of Judaism, which I'm calling October 13th Judaism, which was October 13th was the day that President Trump was in Israel, the Knesset, the release of the hostages, God willing, the end of the war. October 13th Judaism should be about being engaged in Judaism and not just the fight against anti-Semitism, which is real. And it's something that I'm spending more and more time, which is just my own Jewish life, my own religious life, Jewish observance, my family's own traditional observance of Judaism. I'm not an Orthodox Jew, but I'm an of Orthodox Judaism, and I want to be. I have become more Jewishly engaged. I want to be more Jewishly engaged, and I hope other Jews go through something similar, because there could be a renaissance in Jewish life in the diaspora as a result of all this, or we could just all kind of completely recede, and I think the latter would be a tragedy.
We got 2 minutes, Dan. I want to ask you two things. One, are you physically exhausted? And then two, in going forward, are you going to try and keep some focus for the Gentiles who you have served on the American diaspora as well as Israel? Because there are a whole bunch of people who support Israel and don't know anything about American Jewry or Israel. And then we'll pause when we go a little bit longer when I give you the. Let's first ask, are you exhausted? Then we'll come back to the second thing after the break.
I'm exhausted, but that's okay. I'm exhausted, but especially after the last few days, I've been exhausting because there was so much, and a lot of it was happening at odd hours. So we got very little sleep, but I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm
all
healthy.
Right. Well, then
God.
Stand by. I want to ask you about the mission of Call Me Back after the pivot to peacetime, which we hope and pray is occurring as we speak, but we're not sure because Hamas is being Hamas and doing Hamas-like things. Rich Lowry is the editor of National Review. You can follow him on X at Rich Lowry. He's also the host of the Editor's Podcast and the McCarthy Report. Rich, I just had on Dan Senor, and I asked him a question about whether he was going to keep doing the Call Me Back podcast and keep educating Gentiles about Israel, and he's going to. They're going to expand ARC. I am curious, after this war apparently has come to a close, how much do you think the editors will keep an eye on Israel in the Middle East versus everything else going on out there, like the shutdown in China? Do you have like a priority board in the office that you consult before you do an episode?
No, it's pretty much the night before, a text chain, just whatever happens to be in the news and we feel is most important. That's been the Gaza war a lot over the last 2 years. It'll slip down our priority list, but if big important things happen, we'll be there. And this was just so huge, Hugh. And Monday was such a gratifying day, just incredible. And I a little skeptical on phase 2, but Hamas doesn't have the leverage it did. It doesn't have hostages anymore. So it'd be great, if some international force, Indonesia or whatever, goes in and disarms them. A little skeptical that's going to happen. But Israel is in a much better place than it was on October 6th.
Do you think it is possible, or even likely, that Israel will give them a deadline and then will return to kinetic operations, including ground-penetrating ordnance and flooding the tunnels, which they can do now without fear of harming the hostages?
I think some time will have to pass before they do that. I think they have more discretion in how they operate now. Hamas isn't going to invade Israel again anytime soon. Hamas isn't going to be capable of the kind of missile barrage it was on October 7th anytime soon. So I think Israel has a lot more options here, and they probably wouldn't want to step on Trump's moment in the immediate aftermath. I'm sure they'd rather let a decent interval pass.
Okay, now I wanted to broaden out to something I was talking to Dan Senor about. You're the heir to William F. Buckley, who brought a lot of American Catholics with him into the Republican Party. Catholics used to be a pretty unified Democratic voting bloc when I was a kid and growing up, but Buckley did a lot of work in that regards, and others came behind him. Do you think the same thing is going to happen to American Jews making a long march over to the Republican side? Because, boy, they are not wanted in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, maybe glacially. So this is just a deep commitment a lot of liberal Jews have to the Democratic Party, and a deep allergy they have to conservatism and to evangelical Christianity, even though evangelical Christians are some of their best friends now. That just doesn't penetrate. So I defer to Dan on this kind of question, but I'm skeptical it's going to happen anytime soon.
So the national security appeal of the Republican Party doesn't break through, because there are really two parties on national security. I'm afraid Democrats would cut us to the bone. I think Donald Trump will continue to make healthy investments, and those investments benefit the equal of any of our allies, which is Israel. Does that not persuade American Jews to come our way?
I think it should, and I think it probably will at the margins, but I think domestic cultural issues matter more to most people in the United States, including Jews on Israel, than foreign affairs. So if it changes, it's going to be slowly over time.
Bigger question I've got coming on after you, Sarah Bedford from the Washington Examiner. She's young. Michael Singleton from CNN. He's young. You just lost the estimable Mr. Butler. Jack Butler went over to the Wall Street Journal, which is great for him. Sorry for your loss over at National Review. Do you think the ranks of the youngs on the center right and right are stronger than they were 30 years ago, or about the same?
I think they're stronger. I think we have more outlets that are cultivating more young journalists. There are more opportunities for young conservatives interested in having an impact, interested in journalism and politics than there were before. So I think it's better. Now, there's some bad trends as well, right? We all saw the text chains from those young Republicans or college Republicans that were horrifying. So nothing is ever purely up or purely down. Everything's kind of mixed. But I think net, it's better than it was 30 years ago. When I was just getting my start, Hugh, I had two options. I could be an intern for the American Spectator, or I could be an intern for National Review. Now there are dozens of other opportunities.
There are, and there are people that can make their own way on podcasts, but there are also lots of rabbit holes you can go down and end up with a fairly twisted ideology. The good news is Hillsdale's out there pumping out people, and soon others will come along and do the same thing. Has Hillsdale, do you think, impacted the conservative ecosystem?
Hugely. I think National Review's had a Yale association because of our founder, obviously, but I think we've had more Hillsdale interns and fellows than from any other school. And these people, to a man and a woman, are so hugely impressive, right? They're committed, they're educated, and just a great tribute to that school and what they're doing there.
And they can write. Now, last question, Rich. In the Reagan years, there were lots of youngsters. I was one of them, walking around with briefcase, saying nothing. Our opinions were not wanted. People told us what to do, and we did them. That's changed a little bit now, but do you see in Team Trump a conscious effort to bring up the next generation?
I don't know how conscious it is, but I imagine, Hugh, I've graduated out of this myself long ago, but I became a conservative because of Reagan, and not necessarily because I rationally thought through everything that Reagan thought and believed and said. It's because he was a hugely compelling, charismatic figure. So I imagine there are just ranks of young people that feel the same way about Donald Trump. Now, eventually, you need to think it through yourself. You need to go deeper than that. But there's going to be a generation of Trump conservatives or Trump Republicans the way there was a generation of Reagan Republicans among young people.
I hadn't thought about that, and I think you're right. Make sure that you go like and subscribe to the editors that Rich hosts every week, and to the McCarthy Report, which Rich hosts every week, so that you get the very best in conservative thought. Rich Lowry, thank you. I want to turn my attention over to one of our great sponsors, which is besttalkgrill.com. The weather has turned nippy. Some of you are not barbecuing anymore. You would not have to worry about that if you had the Solaire infrared grill, because it heats up to 3,000 degrees in a minute. You don't have to stand outside for a long time. You can get out there, get your meat seared all winter long. You can also get the best logs to burn in your fireplace at home But what you really want to do is give a gift from the besthotgrill.com catalog. Your best clients. Right now, you should be thinking about your best clients. You ought to be thinking ahead to the Christmas and holiday season and about how you're going to take care of them. The best way to do that is with besthotgrill.com. You can get the hibachi or you can get the big. And there are a lot of sizes in between. They've also got outdoor lighting and outdoor heating. Besthotgrill.com. You will never, ever regret getting your besthotgrill.com. And Generalissimo and I have them. I've got two of them. Generally, I have one on each coast. Dwayne's got one of them on the West Coast. And I'm here to tell you, it's absolutely fabulous. You'll thank me. You'll thank him when you go to besthotgrill.com. And by the way, American made, and you can try it before you buy it. It's the other part about besthotgrill.com that we like quite a lot. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm coming back with Sarah Bedford of the Washington Examiner shutdown update like she gives us every week. In the meantime, you can go check out besthotgrill.com. Sarah Bedford is with the Washington Examiner. She's one of their political investigative reporters. And every week I ask her about the shutdown, and there's nothing different about this week, although we have peace in the Middle East, and we had the the Medal of Freedom awarded to Charlie yesterday. In the background, there is the fact that the federal government is closed down. Sarah, what's the prospectus for opening up the government?
I wish I had a different answer for you, Hewitt. It sort of feels like Groundhog Day, but both sides are extremely dug in. And I think for a while, Democrats had the sense that they were potentially winning the messaging war. There was some polling that supported the idea that most people were prepared to blame Republicans for the shutdown because they're in control of all three branches of government. I'm not sure that that is still the case. The longer this drags on, Democrats, I do think, are coming out looking worse and worse. But that early perception seems to have dug Democrats in even deeper to their position that they are simply not going to reopen the government without this sort of performative fight.
Yeah, the Schumer shutdown is so deeply branded, it ought to be tattooed on every senator, not just Chuck Schumer, who votes to keep the government closed. A few have crossed over, and maybe more will. But what about the New Jersey and the Virginia races? Have you heard anything about whether or not this endangers Abigail Spanberger, who's already got trouble because of the crazy attorney general and her own inarticulate responses to boys and girls sports and locker room? And up in New Jersey, it's at Donnybrook. Does this help them in either place?
Well, but in Spanberger's case, where you have a higher concentration of federal workers, she's sort of using this as her closing argument. I think from Spanberger's perspective, she probably welcomes that. She's not having to talk as much about the J. Jones violent text. She's not having to talk about the transgender issues in schools that you're seeing in Northern Virginia. She had a pretty abysmal answer to those questions during the debate. The shutdown gives her something that she can sort of rally around as if she's, a person who could fight for federal workers and potentially get people who may not otherwise be motivated to go and vote for a pretty uninspiring candidate to get out there on election day because she has this rallying point.
It's been my experience that federal workers know why they're laid off. I was in the federal government in the 80s. I followed this since 1991 on the air. And whenever there's a shutdown, federal workers know why they're not getting paid. And now, unless you're in the military, you're not getting paid. I wonder if it's a bad bet for Abigail Spanberger, because those feds know why they're not getting paid, and his name is Chuck Schumer.
Well, the Democrats have been remarkably unified in their messaging around this, and Spanberger is no exception. You haven't had a lot of defections from this argument that it's Republicans who are keeping the government shut down because of healthcare subsidies. I mean, they're trying to make this all about healthcare. And a lot of the federal workers, we've learned this over the past few years. Many of them were Democrats anyway. Their votes really weren't up for grabs for Winsome Sears. The problem was always going to be propensity and turnout. And in that sense, giving people who are already Democrats something to be even angrier about could help Spanberger when otherwise the momentum was really slipping away from her.
No, I'll be back this weekend, and I'll probably get to vote for Winsome Sears on Saturday and try and check the early turnout. Do you have any idea if turnout's up or down in Virginia?
It's in some of the red counties, in the south of the state, there was turnout that was matching or even outpacing 2021 when Youngkin won a victory. And so that, I think, had given Republicans a little bit of hope. They've certainly caught up with their early voting game. But the early voting, the perils of it are exposed by this Jay Jones situation. Thousands and thousands of people voted before they knew that Spanberger was going to stand by really abhorrent rhetoric from her attorney general nominee sharing the ticket with her. So, how much of that was already baked in before we learned about Jay Jones, that's unclear. But this is looking more and more like a race that Winsome Sears could potentially eke out.
Has anyone at Ro Khanna on this show said it was disqualifying? It's the only Democrat I've heard say that about Jay Jones. He's still poison in the water table. Is he around, or did they put him in a cellar somewhere? We got 1 minute, Sarah C. Bedford.
Yeah, he's been awfully quiet. I think Democrats hope that voters forget he exists. I'm certain that the national apparatuses will not be supporting him. But I think Democrats would be okay with a Jason Miyares victory and a Spanberger victory as well. They're sort of trying to cut their losses now.
We will watch very, very carefully this time next week. I'll get the same report. There is some speculation maybe after the No Kings rally this weekend, Chuck Schumer realizes he's digging in a hole and he stops digging. We'll find out. Follow Sarah over at Sarah C. Bedford. She and I both work for the Washington Examiner. I've got a column over at the Examiner today. Go and check that out as well. I've been doing this for so long, 35 years, that I always have antenna up for when someone comes along that I can look forward to watching and listening to in my retirement. That's why Guy Benson's been a host here, Mary Catherine Ham. It's why I bring on all the youngs, I call them, whenever I find them. One of them is Shermichael Singleton. And I see Shermichael Singleton on CNN, and I say, that guy's got juice. Shermichael, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show. I just wanted to get to know you so we can call on you as needed. But I also want to know a little bit about you. How did you get into this business? No one really intends to be a commentator.
Well, first of all, Hugh, thanks for having me on the program. I'm only 35, so I guess I think it's fair for me to say I've been a fan since I was a college-age student.
Yes, you're probably in elementary school, I hope. Yeah.
But my journey is actually quite fascinating. I had never planned to enter into sort of the commentary space of politics. My plan was always to be a behind-the-scenes guy, having worked on a number of campaigns. My hope was at some point to run for office myself. I have no plans or desire to do that anymore. I don't think Washington functions the way it should, so I'm not even interested in that. But I happened to be working for Dr. Carson at the time. And this was when One American News was a lot bigger, I would argue, than what they are today, meaning they were all across. They had channels all over the different satellite cable providers compared to now. Their reach was a lot broader in terms of mainstream. And so I was in South Carolina, and we had just launched a campaign during Dr. Carson's presidential bid to focus on targeting Black men in particular. And it was very sort of an unusual strategy. I had put the strategy together, and OAN at the time did a story. I'll never forget this. We were in South Carolina. They did a story, sent out a reporter, camera crew, et cetera. And I did an interview with them talking about why I believed, I guess this was in, God, what was this, 2016 maybe, Hugh? 2017 maybe?
Yep.
Why I believed that Black men were ripe for political engagement and targeting for Republicans. And I just sort of laid out what my thought process was and what the overall strategy was in terms of operational efficacy. And after the end of the interviewer said, you're really good at this. You should consider getting into media. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe. Fast forward months later, I did another television hit, and the person said the same thing. And that's how I eventually segued myself into sort of television commentary.
Well, you're in a great place now because you're working with people like Jamie Gangel and a bunch of people like Mark over there. Preston is my favorite CNNer, although you can't repeat half of what he says. It'll get FCC fines all over me. But you got a great group of people to work with. I'm curious, Shermichael, what's the backstory? Where are you from? Where'd you go to school? What did you intend? What's your family like?
Yeah. So I'm from the South, the deep South. Grew up in New Orleans, moved to Texas at about 10 or 11 years old. Went to Morehouse College for undergrad, the same school as Dr. Martin Luther King and Spike Lee and Samuel L. Jackson, a bunch of other sort of prominent men. And again, my plans always were to run for political office. I remember being a middle school student in Texas, and I started something called a Teenage Republican Society, TARS. Most people don't even know that this even exists, but guys, it's a thing that Republicans start early. And so I started a TARS chapter. My tennis coach at the time, I used to play tennis, decided, he said, hey, I'll sponsor, because you needed a sponsor, just like in college. I'll sponsor the group. So I said, great, sponsor the group. We had an interesting, diverse group of students, maybe like 8 or 9 of us. Fast forward, graduate high school, I go to Morehouse. The first year, President Obama, former President Obama, was running. Eventually, he would be elected. I went to Morehouse and said, look, I'm a Republican, so I'm going to start a college Republican chapter, which was the most bizarre thing you can probably imagine. Historically Black college, starting a college Republican chapter in the age of what eventually would become the first Black president. Let me tell you, Hugh, it wasn't the easiest thing in the world, but I will say I got so much support from a number of my professors. My entire 4 years of undergrad, we had one of the most actively engaged campus organizations, because we had a lot of debates. We used to bring in different individuals from Georgia, including the current governor of Georgia at the time. He had I think a state legislative role. He came.
Oh yeah, Kemp was in the legislature. Brian Kemp.
Yep. Kemp came and spoke before the group. Karen Handel, Hugh, I don't know if you remember Karen Handel.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Karen financially supported us. I mean, so Sean Hannity, who at the time, or Handley was at the time, was the president of, I want to say, the Atlanta Young Republicans. So we had a lot of support. And a lot of folks, a lot of the guys, Morehousemen and all guys, campus, would come to our events because we had robust debates about a plethora of things. And sometimes, things would get heated, but people enjoyed the fact that there was sort of that intellectual diversity. So you would think like, okay, Black college, era of the first Black president, there's no way in the world some guy who's trying to start a successful Black college Republican chapter is going to work. And believe it or not, it worked well. And a lot of my friends, although they gave me a lot of hell about my views, they supported me. And it was, look, Sherm thinks differently, and that's okay. He's a smart guy. He can intellectually defend his positions. And as long as he can do that, he's okay with us. And so I had a successful 4 years. Again, beyond, started working on presidential campaigns, started with Newt Gingrich my senior year at Morehouse. After finishing Morehouse, Newt dropped out of the race. Mitt Romney became the nominee of the party at the time. I worked for Romney. And then again, fast forward to Dr. Carson. Dr. Carson drops out, endorses President Trump. I sort of joined in a quasi role with Brian Lanza and some of those other guys, Boris, et cetera, who were communications advisors to the president, then candidate Trump in 2016, 17. And so did that for a couple of months. The president appointed Dr. Carson to HUD. I went into HUD briefly with Dr. Carson, and then again back into the political commentary space.
So now, last question, and I hope you'll come back often. When I was your age, I didn't have to worry about everything I said. I could say something really dumb, and no one was videotaping it, and it wouldn't show up online forever, and a column would go away. Nobody could access it. You now live in 24/7, 365, record around. Everything is recorded. Have you considered that? I mean, we got 1 minute. Are you looking forward to that life for 35, 40 years like I've been doing it for 35 years?
Hugh, my great-grandfather, who's deceased now, was a military vet, West Point graduate, would always say, don't be afraid. Don't say things in private that you're not willing to say in public. And I never quite understood the ethos of that until I got older. And that's not to say that, look, I'm a guy. I talk a lot of crap with my guy friends. You see, I got an AR-15 behind me. I'm a big gun guy. So we talk a lot of smack. And I think that's just what guys do. But if I'm comfortable enough, if someone said, well, you said this, I said, hell yeah, I said it because I'm a guy. And that's just the way guys talk amongst guys.
Well, that is great to hear. I look forward to having you back often when the issues are here. But congratulations. I'm so glad to see another generation of young and articulate center-right guys and gals rising up in the world of media. Shermichael Singleton, follow him on X at Shermichael Singleton. I'm off now on a 2-day adventure to upstate New York and then back to the Beltway. So Colonel Kurt Schlichter will be in for me tomorrow and Friday, except I did pre-record my conversation with Dr. Larry Arnn about our next segment in Winston Churchill's World War II series. So do not miss the Hillsdale Dialogue tomorrow. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. Don't forget as well your relief factor today or tomorrow, especially when I'm not here. I know Kurt does the reads. He's wonderful at it. But I believe in the product so much that I'm taking it twice a day now. I did it 3 times a day and did it in the first couple hours today because pulled the hamstring. I really need the relief factor to kick in and reduce inflammation so that I get more mobility than the Ottoman that my grandpa had with one wheel on it. And so I'm getting there thanks to relief factor. But I encourage you, if you have not yet ever given it a try, the only supplement I have taken in more than 20 years. It's the only supplement I've taken for the last 12 years when I've taken it daily, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day if I've got a particularly annoying minor ache or pain. All it does is help your body's anti-inflammatory system thrive. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, omega. So call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF to get started. Or go find this starter pack, $19.95, less than $1 a day, over at their website, relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. And as I go into New York State, I hope I come out of the black hole. But I know from richstatespoorstates.com, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare from every aspect. In fact, I might be driving along some of the worst governed states in the United States because I got to go through Massachusetts and New York before turning around and going back down through Maryland. So that's like 3 deep blue states. And I know they're bad because of richstatespoorstates.com and our sponsor, the American Legislative Exchange Council. Do me a favor before your friends get there for Thanksgiving. You got plenty of time. Go to richstatespoorstates.com and get the book so you can have it for them and you can talk about, if they're from out of town, why their states are not so good when it comes to economic growth and prospects, and why your state is either good or getting better because of all the work that the American Legislative Exchange Council has done. That's ALEC, ALEC.org/Hugh, to get the newsletter on the state of the states, what's going on all across the 99 legislative chambers in the United States, or just go to alec.org/Hugh. Finally, Americans for Free Markets. I want you to remember their website, forfreemarkets.com, FOR, freemarkets.com. Americans are thanking President Trump for ending, or at least putting the spotlight on debanking. We don't like that. We think that is ridiculous, and banks have had notice served, but we want to make sure that it's codified and that the executive order against debanking people based upon their beliefs or practices never comes back. The politically motivated debanking campaign trampled on American businesses and individuals, and it's got to end. Learn more at forfreemarkets.com. That's FOR, freemarkets.com, forfreemarkets.com. Whether you're a gun owner, a right-to-life person, whether you're a religious liberty person, don't get debanked. Go to forfreemarkets.com, FOR, freemarkets.com.